When you have bad audio in your videos, your audience is gonna know immediately. Whereas if you have good audio, it's not something that a viewer is ever going to think about. So there was a project that I worked on for Xbox. It was a zombie fitness program. And I had an amazing audio crew on that project because we needed to capture clean audio of the talent, but we were using POV cameras. So we're running through these different sets that we've built, and the audio team had to get as close as possible while running alongside me with this POV camera, trying to get the boom mic right into the edge of frame where you can get the cleanest audio. And the reason for that is your mic placement is super important, and the way that you capture your audio is gonna make a difference in how your final product turns out.
You're making it. Look out! Stay, keep rolling! Stay, keep
So in this video, I teamed up with my buddy Sydney, and we're going through everything that you need to know to be able to capture good, clean audio so that the viewer will never even think of the audio and they'll be completely engaged with your story. So this is part 3 of a 4-part series that I'm doing with Sydney all about video creator basics. And I'll put a link down below in the description to where you can find part 1 and part 2. And I highly suggest after you're finished watching this video, go back and watch those because we go through everything that you need to know when it comes to your camera, your audio, your lighting, all the different elements to be able to master your camera so that you can focus more on the story, because that's the more important part when it comes to creating a video. All this stuff is great, but these are just the tools so that we can tell our stories. So part 1, we're talking about recording your audio too high and recording it too low. There is like a magic sweet spot where you want to record your audio, and that's between -12 and -6. I always record all of my audio within that boundary. And if those numbers don't make sense to you, then don't worry, because I'm going to break it down a little bit more so it's easier for you to figure out where to set your audio levels. Because I want you to be shooting in manual audio. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in this video. But for this section, I just want to talk about what happens if you're recording too high or you're recording too low. So I just came outside and I'm going to show you a quick demonstration of what I mean by over and under. So right now I'm recording at what you should record at, which is like -12 to -6 dB. Now, if that doesn't really make sense for you, if you're just getting into audio and video and all of that, basically when you see your audio meters on your camera, you want to be hitting like that upper third. So you don't want your audio meters hitting the top, and you also don't want to be recording too low. You basically want to be hitting that like 75% of your audio meters, because in that area you're going to be getting clean audio. Okay, so I know this is going to sound awful because I am recording my audio too high. So I'm hitting the top of my audio meters consistently throughout everything that I'm doing, and it's just peaking. And so what that happens is it causes distortion in your voice, and you're going to hear this awful sound because there's a limit to how loud your audio can be. Now on the flip side, I'm recording way too low, so it's hitting like that 10% mark of my audio meters, way down in the lower register of your decibels. But what's happening is, now that it's so low, I have to boost it in post. So in my editing software, I have to bring up the volume so that my audio matches the rest of the audio in this video. And what happens is you get a ton of noise and it just sounds awful. So the key takeaway from this section is you don't want to be recording too high, and you also don't want to be recording too low. You want it in that 75% range from -12 to -6 so that you're recording clean audio. All right, Sydney, take it from here.
Hey guys, Sydney here. So this whole setup looks interesting, right? And that's because I've set up my Rode VideoMic Pro Plus audio mic, which is this thing over here. This is called a dead wombat, by the way. It's basically a wind filter that prevents the sounds of wind disrupting your audio.
Never heard of this being referred to as a dead wombat, but I like that. This is a windscreen, or, you know, another common term is a dead cat.
Anyway, you're seeing this whole setup because I want to talk about mic placement and how important it is to your videos. Now, mic placement is basically how and where you set up your audio mic. Whether it's using an external shotgun mic on top of your camera, or using a boom mic that's set up on an overhead rig, or using a lav mic, however you set up your mic, I'm going to show you some best practices on mic placement. First of all, the general rule of thumb when it comes to proper mic placement is that you have to be as close to the mic as possible. Not to the point of distortion, but close enough. For example, this setup over here here, I'm about maybe 6 to 8 inches away from the mic, and that's typically where you want to be. Now, there are some specialty mics that can capture really clean audio at further distances. We're not going to talk about that because, well, for one, those mics are super expensive. We're just going to talk about the general prosumer mics that most people use. Mics like this, the Rode VideoMic Pro Plus. Such a good mic. Now, if you wanted to be closer to the mic, I would be cautious because you could either sound like a radio host or it just might sound too distorted. So let's go ahead and try it out. Test, 1, 2, 3. Test, 1, 2, 3. Do I sound like a radio show host? I'm gonna go a little bit closer. Test, 1, 2, 3. Test, 1, 2, 3. And I'm pretty sure I sound really distorted right now.
And one thing I want to add to that, when you get really close to a microphone, you'll start hearing your voice kind of like pop. You'll have like a pa, pa, pa. And that's one of those things that you want to avoid. They have these kind of screens that go in front of your mic if you are doing like voiceover work to get rid of that, but something just to keep in mind.
Conversely, if the audio mic was further away, then I would sound a lot more distant, and overall the audio wouldn't sound very clean, at least not as clean as you would when the mic is placed at a proper distance. So for example, here I am about maybe 2.5 feet away from the mic. Test, 1, 2, 3. Test, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna go a little further. Test, 1, 2, 3. Test, 1, 2, 3. Hear that? Now, you could do that if that's what you're going for. If you're shooting a scene or maybe a short film and you wanted the audio to sound distant, then yeah, obviously set the audio mic farther than the subject. But for general videos, kind of like this, YouTube videos or even interviews, try to place the mic about 6 to 12 inches away from the subject. Now, I know every mic is different, and so you're just gonna have to play around with the mic that you have. And since technology gets better every year, who knows, there could be some mics that can capture really good and clean audio at farther distances. But generally speaking, you don't want to be too far away from the mic and not too close to the mic. And so 6 to 12 inches is a good rule of thumb. Now, mic placement is going to be different for every types of audio mics. Like we've talked about before, you could put your shotgun mic on top of your camera and capture audio there. You can also rig up your audio mic on an overhead boom, kind of like what my setup is right now. You don't see the entire thing, but basically what the setup is that you have the Rode VideoMic Pro Plus connected to the Zoom H1N to capture the audio. That's connected to a multi-friction arm, attached to a right angle clamp, attached to a C-stand. And this is my little concoction because I broke my boom stand not too long ago, and so I had to figure something out. But using an overhead rig like a boom stand or a setup like this is a very common thing to do when you're filming things like interviews or talking heads or things like that. The reason why it's such a common practice is because you don't have to have the camera that close to the subject. Typically what happens in an interview style setup is that you have your subject sitting on a chair. From there, you have your overhead rig setup with the mic pointed towards the subject's mouth. And the beauty with that kind of setup is that you can capture clean audio without having the mic being seen in the shot. So depending on how you compose a shot, you can have your camera be further away, or even if you have multiple cameras, like if you want to have a second angle or a third angle, all while capturing clean audio thanks to your overhead audio setup. That in itself should be a video on its own because there's a whole lot that goes into it, but setting up your mic on an overhead rig is just another great way for proper mic placement. Now, let's talk about lav mics. I'm pretty sure you all know what this is, but basically it's a small mic that you can attach to your actor or your subject and capture clean audio without having to be physically close to them. So these mics are really good for interviews or for documentaries or just situations where you want to capture clean audio from your actor or your subject at a distance. Now, just like we talked about before, we want to be close enough to the mic but not too close where it sounds distorted. And so, for example, if your subject or actor is wearing a shirt like this, you simply just place the clip on the top part of the shirt like so. But they're pretty good mics to use to capture clean audio and can be used in a variety of situations. Now, when it comes to mic placement when using lav mics, it's a little different than with shotgun mics. Sometimes you might see a lav mic clipped to a tie or even a jacket. And for those of you that are real clever, you can actually hide a lav mic in someone's hair. Yep, done it before, and I got clean audio. The reason why that works is because lav mics are generally omnidirectional, meaning that they can capture sound in all directions. So it really doesn't matter if your lav mic is here or over here or under the lip of a cap. As long as the lav mic's about 6 inches from the subject's mouth, you should be able to capture clean audio. There are a lot of different types of lav mics. You can get wired ones where you can connect it to an audio recorder like the Zoom H1N, or you can go wireless and use something like the Rode Wireless Go, where you connect the lav mic to the transceiver pack on your actor or subject, and the receiver unit can be connected to your camera. camera. Regardless, lav mics are great for certain situations and shotgun mics are great for certain situations. It's just all going to depend on the type of shoot that you're on. And with that said, you can actually be really creative and hide lav mics in different situations. Like, say for example, you want to capture someone driving in a car. Well, you can easily hide a lav mic in the visor of the driver's seat. So those are the general rules of proper mic placement. Now, every shoot's going to require different setups, and so just kind of use those rules, but then also break those rules. And then from there, you can figure out a setup that's going to work for your shoot. But those are the general rules when it comes to proper mic placement. All right, Jeven, back to you.
With that zombie example that I was talking about at the beginning of this video, my audio team was like running and jumping over stuff because of mic placement. They needed to get that shotgun mic as close to the actor as possible, right overhead, but not getting in the frame. They couldn't record from like way out in the distance because you would have all of the sound between the actor and that microphone and it just wouldn't sound good. So let's talk about shooting auto versus manual. And I kind of talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but you want to be shooting manual. When you're shooting auto audio, what happens is your camera is going to start deciding where the gain should be set. So essentially, if it gets super quiet, your camera's gonna boost the gain, which effectively is gonna add more noise into your audio. And also, when you start talking really loud after a quiet section, you're gonna hear this loud explosion of audio and then it's gonna taper off. Because what's happening is your camera is responding to the audio that it's hearing. So if it's super quiet, that's gonna boost up the gain. Whereas if it's super loud, it's gonna bring it down. So just don't use auto. It never really works out that well. Now, there's another tool that you can use that comes with some cameras, and that's a mic limiter. And what that does is it's basically not allowing your camera to record at that level where you're getting that overmodulation, where it's hitting that red. And if you are gonna use your limiter, just be aware that if you set your levels too high, yes, it's not gonna overmodulate. However, everything's just gonna be flat and it's gonna be super compressed. It's gonna be like, ah, there's not gonna be any tonality within the audio. And the key is when you're recording audio, you want dynamics. You want highs, you want lows. You want to hear the voice moving up and down. It's like a wave. But if you have everything compressed and it's all like at one level, it's just not gonna sound that good. So when you're recording, you want to make sure that you're capturing as much of those dynamics as possible, but also keeping in mind not going too high and not going too low. So how you set your mic is pretty simple. Basically, what you want to do is put your subject in the place of where they're going to be. So if you're vlogging, you would put your camera in the position where you would typically vlog, and that's gonna be your setup. And then you wanna talk at the proper levels. The same thing, if you had a subject sitting down for an interview, you'd wanna sit them down, put your mic in the proper placement, and then have them talk at a normal level. You can easily have someone just talk about anything, or you can just have them count from 1 to 10 or something like that. But basically you want to try and hear their audio at the level that they're going to be speaking. And then you use the gain in your camera and then the levels on your microphone, depending on what kind of microphone you have, to be able to dial it in so you can get those peaks to hit around -6. And you want to make sure that you have audio consistently hitting up in that -6 to -12 range, and it's not recording too low and it's also not recording too high. So one trick is to just turn it up too loud so that everything's overmodulating and then dial it back so that your peaks are just hitting around that -6 mark.
Now I'm going to chime in for a little bit. Now when it comes to selecting the audio level in your camera, you want to make sure that your audio level is set to a low level. Not necessarily a low number like 1, 2, or 3 because every camera is going to be different, but low enough where you don't hear the preamp noise of your camera. What is preamp noise? This is preamp noise. It's basically your camera trying to figure out what the proper audio gain is going to be. But since most mirrorless and DSLR cameras are just not designed for video production, really, you're going to have bad preamp noise unless your audio levels are set to something low. Like I said before, all cameras are different, but for Sony cameras, I like to set my audio record levels to about 5. And when it comes to Canon cameras, I like to set my audio record levels to the first bracket. And also, all that's going to be dependent on the type of mic that you use in conjunction with your camera. And so just play around with the different levels, play it back in your computer and figure out what levels are going to be best suited for you. The next thing I want to talk about is reverb. What is reverb? Well, basically just echoes that you would hear if you were capturing audio in an empty room. or a hallway. Now, you should know this by now, but sound travels, and it also bounces and reflects off different objects or is absorbed by different objects. If you are filming in an empty room or a big hallway, then the audio coming from your mouth is going to bounce around the walls and the floors, and it's going to sound echoey. That's reverb. But if you're capturing audio from a sound-treated room, then you're not going to hear that reverb. The sound isn't bouncing around because it's being absorbed. Now, sound-treated rooms are typically set up professionally. They're typically set up by these sound panels that are just all over the room. But for most of us, we don't have professionally sound-treated rooms. And so what do? Easy. Add objects to your room. Now here's a clip of me talking in this very room without all these objects added to it. And if you listen really closely, you can hear some reverb. Hey guys, welcome to my brand new YouTube home studio. It's not yet complete, which is why I need your help. Since then, I've added objects to this room, like this futon bed over here. I got some sound panels that I got from Amazon. Not the best, but definitely something. I got backpacks in the wall, and basically this room is filled with objects. And because there are a lot of objects in this room, sound doesn't bounce around so much because it's being absorbed by those objects. So if you are filming in a room that has some reverb, then just add objects in that room. But this is where you can get super creative. I mean, if you don't have sound panels, just use objects like pillows, blankets, furniture blankets, rugs, basically soft cloth-like material to absorb sound. Here's a really cool hack that I came up with. You ready for this? Hold on. I got one of those cheap foam panels from Amazon, and I added a little bracket in the back, a little stand, and I made two of them. And so if I'm ever doing voiceovers, I just place the mic between these two panels, and it typically sounds pretty good. Even now, I bet the audio sounds really good because now my audio isn't bouncing around so much versus me talking like this without my little DIY hacks.
All right, so the next section is talking about dealing with the elements, shooting outside. This is where something like this becomes your best friend. So when you're outside, you have a lot more things to think about. Here in my studio, I have complete control. I can put sound panels up, I can change the way that sound is bouncing around this room, I can set my microphone at the proper placement, and I can get good, clean audio. When I'm outside filming, say I'm on the side of a mountain, all of a sudden, none of that really matters because I have to deal with the elements. I'm standing on the top of a ridgeline with Mount Athabasca in the distance behind me to tell you a story about mountaineering. So wind is one of those things that's really gonna destroy your audio. You'll hear like a when it's hitting the mic, and it just sounds awful. Like you just can't record good audio if there's heavy wind. Now, using something like a dead wombat or dead cat or windscreen, however you want to call this will significantly reduce that wind sound. And it's not going to get rid of it completely. However, you'd be surprised at how much it does reduce it. Like if there's mild wind happening, you won't hear any of it with one of these windscreens on it. Now, if you have heavy wind and it's hitting the mic in the front element, yes, you're going to hear it. And so one thing you really have to think about when you're outside is your camera placement. So if the wind is coming from where you guys are right now, coming at me, and my microphone is pointed towards you, well, what's going to happen is that the wind is going to hit the front element of this microphone. And this is a shotgun mic. So instead of being omnidirectional, this one is more focused in a direction. So it's going to be picking up that audio as the wind hits that front element. And you're going to hear a lot of the So instead of shooting this direction, I would rotate around and have the wind coming from behind the microphone. And that's going to help reduce wind significantly. So you always have to be thinking about when you're out in nature, when you're out in the wild, where's your camera placement and where is the sound coming from? So beyond wind, you have other things. You have cars, you have people, you have loud crowds. Like there's a lot of different things that you might encounter that's going to cause your audio to not sound that great. And the same principles apply when it comes to a loud sound. If your mic is pointed in that direction, it's going to pick that up more than if your microphone is pointed away from that sound. So just think of your camera placement in relation to where the sound is. If you can't walk away and get clean sound somewhere else, you have to shoot in this spot with this loud thing, whatever it is going on. rotate around until you can get the best audio where the sound is coming from behind the microphone. And when you're shooting with a lav, it's actually the reverse, because you want, say, the wind to be hitting me on the back versus hitting me on the front where the mic is. So you can use your body to block whatever sound or wind so that you can get cleaner recorded audio. Now, the biggest thing that you can do if there is a loud sound or wind or something is go find a spot where you don't hear that. So walk away. Go find another place that you can shoot this scene where you're not going to be hearing as loud of sound. The key to getting good, clean audio is just to be aware of audio. So you need to start listening and you need to start thinking of where is that sound coming from, and then positioning yourself and the microphone in a way where you're reducing that as much as possible.
Now, what about voiceovers? How do I capture voiceovers in my home? Well, a cool little secret is that you can actually use your closet as a voiceover booth. No joke. Just simply place your mic between some clothes and just talk into the mic as usual, and then boom, record your voiceovers. Welcome to my closet. I've literally set up my camera between my clothes, and what that does is that it creates a barrier, and so the sound coming out of my mouth isn't bouncing around the walls because it's actually being absorbed by my clothes. Now, obviously, this is not the perfect setup, but it's definitely not the worst. And so the audio that you're hearing right now should sound somewhat decent because you don't really hear any reverb. Now, you might have to do a bit of EQing depending the size of your closet, because if you have a smaller closet, then your voice might actually sound a bit boxy. That's just the nature of small rooms, but again, at the very least, there isn't any reverb because the clothes are absorbing the sound. All right, here we go. Voiceover test, 1, 2, 3. Voiceover test, 1, 2, 3. Doing voiceovers in a closet. You hear any reverb? I don't. Cool little hack, using your closet as a voiceover booth.
Your audio is one of those elements in your video that could completely pull your audience out of what it is that they're watching and take away from your story. However, if you do it right, your audience will never even think about it. So guys, we'd love to hear more about your experience working with audio down in the comments below. Is this something that you put some effort into, or is it something that you kind of just never even thought about? And guys, like I said at the beginning of this video, this is part of a 4-part series. So head down the description and check out video 1 and video 2, and go check out Sydney's channel because he's got some really awesome videos that's gonna help you on your filmmaking journey. All right guys, that's it. I'll see you on the next one.